Well, good afternoon, and once again, welcome to Cooking with Spirit, my weekly Lenten cooking demonstration and theological reflection as priest of Christ Church in Bolton, Ontario. What I'm wanting to do today is a fairly simple beef stroganoff recipe, but done in my Instant Pot, which is just a glorified digital pressure cooker. But it just makes making this recipe so simple and so nice. So the first thing I'm going to do, I've put a kilo of ground beef inside of my Instant Pot, and I'm going to set it to its saute setting. Just a second, I'm going to get a paper towel. Okay, so as it begins to saute, I'm just going to use the spatula here to break up the ground beef, and I will be adding approximately 4 cloves of minced garlic. As I've said before, I love garlic. My wife says I sometimes get a little carried away with it. So if you find that you like only a softer version with a lighter garlic flavor, feel free to cut back to less garlic. Now I have pre-diced a whole white onion, and I'm going to add that into the ground beef, and we'll let all those things saute together. Now, as they do their sauteing, I'll just take the opportunity in the moment to do my theological reflection. The symbol I want to talk about today isn't something that I could easily bring in and show on camera. It's actually a rocking chair that sits in my living room at home. Originally, it's a very old antique Lincoln rocker, and when I first got it, it was just a box full of wooden parts. Some of them had to be refabricated, some needed to be repaired. Gradually, over the course of about a week, I put that Lincoln rocker back together and remade the parts that needed to be remade, and then recaned the seat and the back to have this beautiful rocking chair. And when I get into that rocking chair, somehow it always draws my mind back to when each of my nieces and nephews and my granddaughter were just little. And that great time that was spent when I would get to hold those tiny little human beings, hold them and try and help them to go off to sleep. It was always a time of great stillness and quiet. And today I think I'd like to talk to you about stillness. I think the psalmist really hits us over the head with that message when he says, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still if you want to encounter God. But there's also that magnificent story in the Old Testament of the prophet Elijah. Now, Elijah has been zealous about doing what God called him to do from the very beginning. And he has gone and he has fought it out with King Ahab, and his wife Jezebel. In fact, he has challenged them to the point where Jezebel has convinced her husband that Elijah has to die. And they have sent out soldiers to find Elijah and kill him. And so Elijah needs to run away. And as he runs away, he soon finds himself in a cave in the mountains. And as he is there complaining to God, God tells him, "I'm going to come to you." Well, after that, as Elijah waits for God, there's a great earthquake. And Elijah is certain that God's voice is going to be found there in the great earthquake. But the book of Kings tells us, but God was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, it tells us there was a huge wind, rushing and powerful, and Elijah is convinced that God will speak out of this wind. And again, the book of Kings tells us, but God was not in the wind. And next we're told that there was an enormous fire, all-consuming. And Elijah is absolutely sure that this is where God is going to come to him. And the book of Kings once again says, but God was not in the fire. But after the time of earthquake, wind, and fire, the book of Kings tells us that there was a still calm. And in that stillness, in that quiet, that's where the voice of God finally gets through and is able to speak to Elijah. In the stillness, God speaks to us. Now, I'll bring us back to the fact that we are preparing for the season of Easter. I love Holy Week and Easter so much, but especially the service of the Great Vigil on Saturday night. We won't be having one this year, but I look forward to being able to return to a great vigil next year. In that vigil, there was a sermon preached by one of the great fathers of the church in the early centuries of the development of Christianity. And his words speak to my heart every time I hear them, and I often use them as a reading at the great vigil. They go like this. Something strange is happening. There's a great silence and stillness on earth. There's a silence on earth because the King has fallen asleep. God has fallen asleep in the flesh, and hell trembles with fear. A reminder that especially in that Easter reality, that Easter experience, it's in the silence, it's in the stillness that God reaches in and touches our human life. And so as we journey through this third full week of Lent, I would challenge each of you to find opportunities in this week to just enter into a quiet space, to seek out a little stillness in your day, and to wait there, watch there, to expect there, to find that God is there in your stillness as well. I hope that that reflection will be helpful to you in your ongoing preparations for Lent as it remains and for Easter. And God bless you. Now this ground beef is almost browned enough to move forward. Of course, traditionally beef stroganoff is made with thinly sliced skirt steak. I've often done it with leftover steak, thinly sliced, and I have found that it has just as much wonderful flavor using ordinary ground beef. And so in the interests of time, I decided, and since when I went to the store, they didn't have any skirt steak available. I decided that I would use ground beef in this recipe today. But I would follow the same steps no matter what sort of beef I had in here to brown it nicely with the onions and garlic in order to infuse it with all of that beautiful flavor base from onions and garlic. And like I say, we'll carry on after the Instant Pot has got it all browned nicely. I just put the Instant Pot on the saute setting while I brown it. I'll shut that off when everything is browned and carry on with the preparation. And then I'll show you a picture of the finished product and cut out the 8 minutes in the pressure cooker part, because once again, I don't think you gain anything by watching the pressure cooker do its job. So I'll edit that out. In the meantime, while it finishes browning, I'll just move it a little to the side and move my prepped bowls of vegetables for the next stage out of the way, and give my regular demonstration on a napkin fold. Now this one is very, very simple, and doesn't take a lot of time. You would need a napkin ring in order to do it, but it looks very nice laid across the plate for dinner. So you're going to take the napkin, fold it in half, and then fold it in half again. Now, with the open four corners toward you, you'll fold up almost to the center, leaving maybe a centimeter around these upper edges, and then fold back so you have about a 1 centimeter overlap, and you're just going to go back and forth in an accordion fold. And when you've done all of that side, you'll flip it over and do exactly the same on the other side to create, as I say, a nice accordion fold. And when you have it all done, and this is such a simple napkin, you're going to slip it inside of the napkin ring to hold it all together at the center, and then just open up the outside edges to create a lovely sort of bow tie effect to lay across the plate. I think we only need a moment or two longer in order to have this meat beautifully browned. I actually think we have reached the point that we're looking for. And so at this point, I add about a half a pound of mushrooms and about 2.5 cups of beef broth. The reason I've cut that down to 2.5 rather than the 3.5 that I would generally use, when I have a thing that some people will say they don't even recognize, which is a bit of leftover wine, I will, because Becky and I each have a glass, and that usually leaves a glass of white wine that would be going completely to waste, we will often take what's left and drop it into an ice cube tray. And that way, we can throw it in the freezer, freeze it, and when we do need a little bit of wine for a recipe, we have some that would have otherwise gone to waste anyways. So I've added about 2.5 cups of beef broth because I just happened to have a cup of white wine in the freezer. And now, oh boy, I've made a mess. See, that's why I made sure I had a paper towel close by, because I always seem to slop something. We're going to put the lid on the Instant Pot. we'll make sure that it is in its sealed position, and so we can just set it to pressure cooking. It doesn't want to shut off the cancel. There we are. So we'll push to pressure, and we want it to cook under pressure for 5 minutes. And start. That should just carry on. It usually takes about 8 minutes for it to get up to pressure, and then it's going to be 5 minutes more to pressure cook. So I'm going to shut down the video now and edit out this time, and then come back to you with an opportunity to see the last stages and to see the finished product. Well, now luckily my brain managed to kick in before it was too late. I forgot a couple of very important things, and so we'll do those now. First of all, we want to, excuse me, not that one. We want to add about 1.5 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. I have to use French's Worcestershire because it's the only one that has no gluten. But it's a very good product. I have to buy it on Amazon. I've not found it in any local grocery store. And we're going to add about the whole box of pasta. And again, I have to use gluten-free pasta, which means I'm not able to use the traditional flat egg noodles. And the only gluten-free pasta I could find at my grocery store today was ordinary elbow macaroni. But the good news is, no matter what one we use, it's going to taste wonderful. So now I'll put the lid back on and allow it to work its way up to pressure again. Well, now we're down to the last minute of pressure cooking for this recipe. And so I've come back on to show you the final stages and to finish the total product. I guess while I wait that last minute, I can continue to run the dishwater to get my dishes all done. And there's the final call that we're done cooking. So what we'll do is push the quick release. I'll just put a towel over the pressure release just so it doesn't spatter things all over the counter. And when the pressure has been fully released, then we can open the top on the pressure cooker and do the final stages of preparing our meal. I have to say, I love my Instant Pot. I love how quickly it allows me to finish things that, kind of like stroganoff, used to take a lot of time. And now in under a half an hour, you can have a beautiful meal that's absolutely ready to serve. A note here on the counter that I need to pay attention to as soon as we're done the show, so I thought I'd better pick it up now. We're almost done with the pressure release. Wipe up so I don't have a lot of mess to deal with afterwards. I think it's likely. Not quite yet. Still got a little pressure against it. That should likely do the trick. And there we are. Now, shut this off before it gets too deep. Now we'll give it a stir. Of course, all the pasta is just perfectly cooked now, but it's all on the top. You need to be able to get down to the liquid, and we are going to add about 3 tablespoons of, in my case, gluten-free all-purpose flour, and about 3 tablespoons of chopped parsley, and a half a cup of sour cream. I'll put it back on the saute setting so that I've got the heat that I need. As I mix all those last ingredients together, I'm going to need a large spoon to try and mix with. Getting a little steam up the side of the pot there. I nearly burned my finger. Now we just want to have it on the saute setting long enough to allow the flour to thicken the juice of the stroganoff into a nice gravy. And this meal is ready to eat. And since I recorded just prior to my usual lunchtime here in the office, I can tell you what I'm having for lunch today. I think I've got it well mixed together, so I'm just going to allow the heat boiling. Oh, I'm going to have to wipe up the counter when I'm done, I can tell you that for sure. Just allow all of those things to work for a minute or two. Again, not something that you particularly need to watch, and I may be able to edit it out as I put the final video together to post on YouTube. I really hope that you've enjoyed this simple demonstration today that will always produce a delicious meal. Again, I've been enjoying just kind of taking comfort foods, things we all really like, and turning them into a meal that's just a little bit more special. God bless you all, and thank you so much for coming out and taking the time to think not just about a good meal, but also to give a little thought to our spiritual lives during